Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I'm your host, Maryann Petri, and there is a non-denominational retreat weekend at the Resolution Center of Jacksonville, Florida. This will be a time of support and renewal for grandparents and parents on the journey of parental alienation, standing strong in resilience, paving the way for good health and a great future. This will take place April 22nd through the 24th at the Resolution Center of Jacksonville, Florida. I will have all the details in the podcast notes. I have a brand new guest. I'm proud to announce I have Todd Bensman. He is a full-time Texas-based senior national security fellow for the Center for Immigration Studies, a DC-based policy institute examining immigration, and he is author of America's Covert Border War. This was published February 23rd, 2021. He joined CIS following 9 years in counterterrorism intelligence, and before that, a 2-decade-long career as a journalist. He writes, speaks, and grants media interviews as an expert on immigration security and counterterrorism, about which he has testified before Congress. So we have a lot to talk about. I welcome you, Todd Benson, to the show. Thank you so much.
Good to be here. Thank you. Yeah.
So, how did you get involved in all of this, when you started out in your career?
Well, I was a journalist for 23 years, so I guess I count as a recovering journalist. And I was a newspaper reporter, so in Texas. And
Okay.
that kind of put me in proximity to the border and Mexico and border Mexico issues. And I did a lot of coverage, a lot of stories about the border. And when 9/11 happened, I was working for the Dallas Morning News covering the FBI. And Dallas is the headquarters for American Airlines. So the main investigation ended up as it was an epicenter in Dallas. And so I kind of got sucked into the whole vortex of terrorism and counterterrorism, and it never really ended for me. I just kept going with that and the border, and it all kind of connected later. Then I was recruited to the Intelligence and Counterterrorism Division of the Texas Department of Public Safety, which is our big state police agency here. And I worked for them for 9 years. I kind of disappeared, because intelligence people don't write stories anymore.
Mm-hmm.
In 2018, I was recruited by the Center for Immigration Studies, and that's where I am now. The last few years I've been with them.
So are you kind of relieved you're out of the intelligence part?
Oh, I missed it. I still miss it a little bit. It was a really interesting career. It was a good career. And I guess I kind of missed writing and reporting again. So I kind of have come full circle, but I don't know if I'm a journalist anymore, but I definitely am writing and thinking and communicating about these issues now.
With the federal terror watch lists, how often, I don't know much about this, this checked quite a bit, I'm sure.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah. And you've also been a journalist for the Dallas Morning News, CBS, and Hearst newspapers, as well as others. So, you've got an extensive career. How, if a young person is looking to get into this, how do they do that?
Well, I just started out. I wanted to be a reporter, so I went to college. Got my undergrad in journalism and my graduate degree in journalism. So, I just used those to go get a job with a newspaper, and that's what I did. I don't. Nowadays, it's all different. So, that dates me. This is all pre-internet.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's there are lots of different publications. There's online ones. You can make your own. You can be your own journalist now.
Mm-hmm.
And have your own Substack, and everything's all sort of fractured and different now for
Mm-hmm.
that. So I don't know how you do that nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
But
So, when you wrote this book, how long did it take you to write America's Covert Border War?
America's Covert Border War is really it's an aggregate of everything that I learned when I was a journalist and an intelligence practitioner. So I kind of put as much of it together as I could without ending up in prison or something for, breaking classified classified protection laws. But, I started writing about this issue of people coming in from Iraq over the
Mhm.
border, which was really struck me as unusual. Nobody had ever reported that. And I was a reporter in San Antonio at that time with proximity to the border. So I just started reporting about like, how are these people getting all the way from Iraq and Syria over the Texas border? What?
Mhm.
And so I ended up traveling to Syria and Jordan and Guatemala, Mexico. Went all over the world tracking these trails, and wrote a bunch of stories. And I think I might have been the only one who'd ever written or raised the issue that maybe people could do something. There was an access to the border. And then when I went over to the intelligence side, I discovered this whole world of federal investigators and intelligence people who were working on this issue all the time, keeping the country safe from it. And I joined in with them and worked on it for 9 years as an intelligence person. So I already had this expertise down from journalism, and then I worked it from a law enforcement, national security perspective. So I really got a really interesting view on an issue that is controversial, to say the least, because
Mhm.
there are a lot of people that just don't believe this, that it doesn't exist. And I was with the Center for Immigration Studies when Donald Trump came out with, hey, terrorists are crossing the border. And, everybody jumped on him and said, you're a liar. It's not true. None of that's true. And it made me angry
Mhm.
because I had been working for years and years on the problem with federal people that do this for a living. This is their
Mhm.
day job. So I decided at that point I was going to put everything I had into a book
Mhm.
and publish the book, and this is the result of it. The book really is just a revelation of the counterterrorism programs that we, as a nation, put out after 9/11. We unfolded these really interesting counterterrorism programs at the border and in Latin America. And in my opinion, that's what's kept us safe from that kind of an attack. That sort of a from the rear entry, the
Mhm.
the back flank. And so um, it's really just a piece of journalism about what that is and what the whole issue is. And the book doesn't it's not out there going, oh my God, the terrorists are coming, the terrorists are coming. It's really
Mhm.
about the counterterrorism programs that try to counter that issue.
Well, I always thought even when 9/11 happened, I don't know why the US just didn't close the borders.
Well, they
Tot
did. They did for a while. That was the initial presumption was, well, they're coming after us, so we have to start looking for every possible way to defend. And the border was an obvious place that everybody knew it at that point in time, and so they did. They closed the border for a week, a couple weeks or something, but then they had to open it because we have commerce. But they had to put these counterterrorism programs in that I talk about, and I just call it America's Covert Border War, um, to make sure that they're not in front of Congress explaining why they didn't do it.
Mhm. Mhm.
They had to do something down there because the border is connected by 20 to 25, 26 contiguous countries, really the whole world
Mhm.
can come right through there, all the borders, unlike Canada,
Mhm.
which I guess unless you come in by air or ship or something, you're parachuting into the Yukon or something with a dog sled team. That's about
Right.
That's about it. But the southern border is very different because it has lots of other countries that connect to it and are porous and corrupt
Mhm.
and have airports.
So when they stopped building this wall, I had a friend who went down there on a vacation, and she said that some people got together and collected $30 million, and they built along with the wall. They continued it, but she said there's still parts of the wall that are just laying there getting rusty.
Yeah, that's true. Well, yeah, that is true. I've been down there. I've climbed all over those rusty piles and everything.
Mhm,
And the wall, Trump's wall, actually is not his idea. I mean, this thing goes back to 2006.
mhm,
It's a bilateral support for building a wall. We put a lot of money. We passed an act of Congress, the 2006 uh, law to build the fence, and we did. We for years we built that wall, and then they just kind of ran out of money and didn't re-up it. But uh, the walls work to a very significant extent in that it definitely deters pedestrian traffic. Grandma and children are not climbing 30 feet high on a ladder. I'm
mhm,
not doing that.
mhm, mhm,
Uh, but maybe some really Olympian young drug smuggling men might do that. And
mhm,
there's video of those guys doing it, but there aren't that many Olympiads out there willing to do that sort of thing. And so it forces people who would cross and smugglers to go wherever there's no wall. They avoid it. And you can see that down there. I spent a lot of time on the border, and you could, wherever there's a wall, there's like almost nothing happening. If you want to see anything
mhm,
happening, you have to go to the gaps between the walls, and then there's all kinds of action.
mhm,
So walls definitely work as long as you have patrols and people on the other side of it, working it with cameras and tech and all that. So when they stopped the wall, they did leave huge gaps, and that's where they come in. That's where they're all
mhm,
coming through. That's where all the action is to this day. It says something to me that there's no action at the walls.
mhm, mhm,
Why would there be? It's just you got to take the path of least resistance.
mhm. Well, how much money would you say is laying there in the desert with all this rusted walls laying around that should have gone up?
Oh, hundreds of millions of dollars. Um, I think it's billions actually. You can find these piles, all along the. I mean, some of them are big yard. They're like scrap yards that go for acres and acres and acres. And you can. I was with some friends one time, reporter friends who had a drone, and they just flew this drone high and low over this thing, and it's just acres and acres and acres of you know 15-20 foot high piles of panels and all the other stuff that goes with it, concrete. And
Mhm,
I was there on the day that they stopped construction, with the vehicles and machinery and heavy machinery all kind of leaving, and that stuff is all still there. Yeah, it's a terrible waste, and nobody seems to really mind. I don't know if they can ever even use it because now it's all turning orange and rusty. It's ruined.
and this is an incredible waste of taxpayer dollars.
I think so. I mean, why not just put it up, finish it up, put up whatever's left. Listen, if you believe that walls don't work, then just shrug your shoulders and smirk and go away,
Mhm,
but
mhm,
just don't care about it. Well, it's nothing. It's not going to change anything. It's
mhm,
really $25 billion to build the wall, which is like what, a B-2 bomber or something. I mean, it's not that in the scheme of things. all of a sudden everybody's a fiscal conservative when it comes to the
Yeah.
wall, but not much else. If you don't believe it works, why are you saying anything at all about it? But the
Mhm.
fact of the matter is that the people who oppose it are always screaming bloody murder about it, how
Mhm.
terrible it is, and just we got to get rid of it. That just tells me it works, and they know it works.
Mhm. Well, and on top of that, like you said, these drug smugglers are coming in to this country. There's other, possibly criminals coming into this country, just walking through. And they even had on the news this little boy was just by himself, a 10-year-old walking and coming through. And that's child abuse.
Well, what's happening at the border right now is that we are suffering through the greatest mass migration crisis in American history. We have never seen numbers anywhere close to these numbers that are of people who are coming to the border trying to cross it in the last. And if you look at the charts, the of data that are published by the CBP, you can see when it started, and it started in November of 2020, and then it went straight skyward in January of 2021. You can trace this thing right to that day, because Trump had these policies that was keeping people out.
Mhm.
Nobody wanted to come. Nobody wanted to try to come. It wasn't worth the money, the smuggling money, to show up at the border and get turned back and deported by Donald Trump. And the Biden administration dismantled all of that on day one, including stopping with the wall. And the entire world of aspiring migrants saw that, heard it, saw it, and was like, "Let's go. This is the time to go." And it's that simple. There aren't a lot of complexities to this. It's all about policy. And in the last year and a few months, we've seen 2.5 million people hit that border. The last time we saw anything close to that was in the year 2000, 22 years ago. We had a crisis back then, but even then it was nothing like this. So we have a tremendous number of people, city size, megalopolis size numbers of people crossing that border, and it's about to get really bad.
Mhm.
We really haven't even seen the worst of it yet, um, because there's this one last Trump policy called Title 42, which is a pandemic control policy, and they just announced that they're getting rid of that on May 23rd. And when they get rid of that, it will be just about completely open borders. There'll be no impediment whatsoever to anyone at all crossing and getting in and staying in. So they're anticipating about 18,000, as many as 18,000 people a day, which is 540,000 a month. So you can do the math there and see that if it stays on course like that with those kind of numbers, we're looking at a really like kind of Los Angeles sized city coming into the country by the end of the year. I mean, the numbers are just astounding. We've
Mhm.
never seen any. It's broken every record by far.
Now, it was also, that they were giving these immigrants large amounts of money for coming into the country. Eh.
Well, there's a lot of misinformation about that. The policy that caused the women and children to come in actually was an exemption to the Title 42 policy that I just told you about. Partly, it's really important because Title 42 was requiring that we return every single migrant that we caught to Mexico and remove the possibility of them claiming asylum. That was the big thing about Title 42. No asylum, and you end up back in Mexico. Well, Biden came in and said, we're going to keep Title 42 for everybody except women pregnant women and families and unaccompanied minors, because that was inhumane and cruel to put them back and make Mexico take care of them.
Mhm.
So the substance of the crisis that happened was that the demographic was all families,
Mhm.
hundreds and hundreds of thousands of parents with children crossing, and also, they said we'll leave no child behind in Mexico as a matter of, like a humanity. Uh, and so that's why you would see, children wandering around alone, because their parents just sent them over or sent for them, either pushed them over or sent for them. And, they would all get in and be well taken care of. And then at government expense, they would be reunited with relatives in the United States and flown to wherever they are. And families that were coming through very often would get $4,400 per family when they crossed in and were paroled into the country. And so you saw payments like that, not to everybody, but to those who seem to qualify. And to this day, we don't know what the criteria is for that, but quite a few of them had checks for $4,400. So I don't know what that is or how that's based
Mhm.
or whatever. And then they also, lots of them were given airfare and air transport to whatever city in the country they wanted to fly to.
Yeah.
So I don't know, and some didn't. So I don't know how some did, some didn't. Um, but anyway, this was a family, migrant family crisis for most of the time. After after May 23, though, all the single adults will be turning themselves in addition. And that's going to be, just to give you an idea, in the last year, Title 42 turned back about 1.7 million people who turned right back around and kept trying.
Mm.
And about 40 to 60,000 of them got through a month, every month. But so they kept trying, but now those people won't have to run and get through. They'll just turn themselves in. So you could easily see 1.7 million more people coming through
Mhm.
that are being resettled into the country. I mean, nobody is going to be really turned back after May 23rd that I can see. They're going to just pretty much parole everybody into the country. It's going to be a real mayhem.
Mhm.
To be like something you've never seen before. And that's not according to me. That is the Washington Post and Axios and Wall Street Journal and NBC, ABC, CBS. Everybody's reporting these numbers that the Biden administration thinks that it's going to have to contend with. And so they're going to the Pentagon for troops. They have gone to FEMA, and they're arranging for FEMA to come down and treat this like a disaster zone. They are marshaling aircraft to be able to move these migrants all around the country so that they're not stuck on the riverbank for long periods of time. They are putting out calls for volunteers from other federal agencies. They've got hundreds so far. They're really getting ready for something that is just beyond the American experience. So get ready for that.
So this is costing the American taxpayer a boatload of money. And I'm sorry these people are in distress, but I also heard that when these people enter the country and then they have to go before a parole board or something, that
Yeah.
yeah, it's gonna take years for that to happen. We'll say, like, 2 years, and by that time, those people aren't even gonna show up.
That's right. So the whole game on the border is about the asylum system. The American asylum, I think that to really understand what's happening and why, you have to understand something about the asylum system. And that was the modern version of it is can be kind of traced to the 1980 Refugee Act, but it goes beyond that to back to kind of the World War II, post World War II era. And it was built for, Jews fleeing Nazis, and it's for, Vietnamese boat people fleeing communist re-education camps, and North Korean defectors and people, Soviet refuseniks, that sort of thing. People who are really in distress of political persecution. But it allows you, if you can get onto U.S. territory by airplane or by the border, it allows anybody to make a claim like that you were like one of those people, that you were like a refusenik, or somebody fleeing a Nazi, Hitler type character, and so the game is that we take you at your word, and then we don't have to verify. We just have to go by gut. Yeah, this person has credible fear. Maybe it's, we'll have to sort this out later. And then they are able to get a stay of deportation. If you say those words and come up with some kind of story without proof or anything, you get a stay of deportation. That's the game. Nobody wants anything beyond that. That's all anybody really goes for. And then, let you have a year to apply for asylum. But by that time, you're already in.
Mm-hmm.
So most of them don't bother to apply. They just use it to get in. Those who do apply, who are economic migrants, they're ultimately turned down. About 5% of Guatemalans ever get asylum. 7% of Haitians. Most of the people that are crossing the border, the largest nationalities, are economic migrants, and immigration judges know it. So they reject their claims by vast majorities. These are the experts. They know that these people are not eligible. But when they get a decline, they just disappear. They're supposed to be deported after they get a decline, but of course that's just not the game. But while you're waiting, so many people have put in for this thing that the wait list is now about 4.5 to 5 years on average. So you get if you apply and go through it, you've got 5 years to put down roots. You get a social security card, you get work authorization, you get qualified for any kind of welfare benefits, or Obamacare, or whatever you want. It's almost like being a permanent resident during that 5 years. And so it's very alluring. I mean, the Trump administration's whole strategy was to take all that off the table, and it worked. As soon as you took all that off the table, I mean, it was like a narcotic drug. I mean, people were coming in, and they still are. And it's like the wall. The migrant advocacy industry was screaming bloody murder to put it all back the way it was, because it let everybody in. Then that's what they wanted. They wanted to let everybody in. So Trump took the asylum system off the table, and the Biden administration put it back on the table, open access for anybody. And that's what caused this. That's why we're in this. They put it back the way it was. And now we have 2 million people, and we're about to see the entire world come in, and they're all going to claim this asylum. It's all bogus. There may be a few real ones in there, but I feel sorry for the real ones, because they're just going to be in this long wait. Real asylum seekers are going to get pushed aside by Haitians who are not legitimate asylum seekers, and El Salvadorans and Hondurans, and those are just poor people. My heart goes out to them. I spend a lot of time with those people. I know them. I'm face to face with them all the time. They're not just numbers to me. I spend most of my time with them on the trail. I get it.
Mhm,
I often think that if I was one of them, I would do the exact same thing. I would, if I could take advantage of these gaps and loopholes to get into the United States, I would do it.
mhm,
But there are 700 million people who live in the world who are under the who are in extreme poverty, and
mhm,
asylum is not for people living in extreme poverty. They're for people who escaped gulags,
mhm,
in communist education camps. So it's a gross distortion and abuse of a noble purpose, of a noble program. And I just think that countries, have to draw the line about, like, well, how many of the world's billions of poor people are we going to take in?
mhm, mhm.
Country has to be able to decide that.
Yeah, and it's not just the United States, this is also happening to Great Britain. They're taking in immigrants are coming in there too that they're not too thrilled about. I have friends over there that aren't
That's right.
thrilled.
Oh, that's right. That's right. The European Union has had has had to contend with millions of migrants pouring over its borders. And what do you do with that? I mean, that you just cannot take the entire world on.
Mhm,
At some point, somebody has to say, okay, all you people, we're taking you in, but all the rest of you, we're not.
mhm,
And it's hard to do that because you look in their eyes and they all have a story, and we could be them, and I
mhm,
get it. But you know life is harsh, and sometimes you have to just make decisions.
mhm. And, you know, and the stories they tell may not even be real. You could be talking to a sociopath that's telling you whatever, you know how
That's,
sociopaths are.
no, that's true. That's absolutely true. The asylum system is uniquely prone to lying.
Mhm,
All you have to do is just lie and make up a good story that fits what's working. What everybody who went before you said, this. I told them that there was a cop on the corner who kept bothering me, and it worked. I got in, so all of a sudden everybody's talking about the cop on the corner. The same cop
yeah.
on the corner doing the same exact thing. And asylum officers, I talk to them all the time, and they just they're full of stories about just how totally obvious the lying is, but they're not allowed to do anything. They just have to check the yes box.
So are they checking well, I don't even know how they would check, but people with mental illnesses, you know,
No,
uh,
I mean, mental illness. Well, I mean, I think if somebody's a danger to themselves, or to an immediate danger to themselves and others, we probably will put those people in a detention situation. I don't know if we're going to deport them.
mm,
Right now, we don't really do deportations of criminals. Are at the lowest they've ever been in this country. We largely stopped deportation operations from the interior of the country. Normally, if you're convicted of a felony, and you serve your time, when you get out, you are released to an ICE officer,
mm,
and you get deported. You never step foot in freedom again. You're just gone. But they suspended all of that. So now they're getting out and they're just running around, and no, even serious offenders
mhm,
no longer being deported. I think they'll still deport a serial killer or something, but
mhm.
you have to be really, really, bad, aggravated, violent, aggravated felon to even get consideration for deportation. And the officers have to call ICE headquarters to get special permission for each one of those. And half the time they say no.
So a lot of Americans say, well, they'll deport them once they kill one of ours. When they're dangerous and they do something to an American, then they'll get deported.
Yeah, that's not happening anymore.
Mm.
Nobody thinks that's an issue.
Oh, this is not good. Um,
For example, the president actually said in a press conference that he doesn't consider DWI felony significant enough crime to deport a criminal alien who gets convicted of it. And DWI people kill our families all the time in senseless, road tragedies. I mean, but he's on record. I mean, it's almost notorious that he said, yeah, DWI is not in my opinion. So we're not deporting anybody convicted of DWI or DUI. Um, so what do you say to that? What do you do to that? They're not deporting DUI people. And I've got kids on the road myself.
mhm, mhm,
If you have a chance to get rid of, I mean, there's nothing we can do about an American citizen who gets convicted of DWI, really. But we certainly have this option of deporting criminal illegal aliens. Why not do it? Like, at least get rid of them.
mhm, mhm. I agree. So it took you quite a while to write this book, and it's very fascinating that you took all this time to write this book. And how are you? Is it being promoted well? Are you?
Yeah. The book is done much better than expected. It's a controversial topic. It's terrorists crossing the border is kind of taboo.
Mhm,
But I approach it in an academic way, and I bore witness as a intelligence practitioner on the inside of it. I've traveled the world
mhm,
reporting this. I was in a pretty unique position to talk about how those people from terrorism countries of national security concern, are crossing the border. Those people are still crossing the border now. And the book published in about 1 year ago. So it's in March. I'm about a year into it, and it is I think more prescient now than it was even then, because the border is so out of control that and so many people are crossing and getting through and getting away, and we're having to release everybody, and all of our normal systems are just down,
mhm,
including America's Covert Border War is down. These programs, I have evidence that things are really breaking down even for that. I'll give you just a couple examples. In December, Lebanese, lots of Venezuelans are coming over the border. So in December, a Lebanese-born Venezuelan swam the Rio Grande. And when he was caught, they ran his fingerprints and his name and everything, and he came out as on the FBI's terrorism watch list as a Category 5 group member with substantial derogatory intelligence. He was FBI went down there and judged him to be a high risk and a flight risk. So they recommended that he continue to be detained and not released. And ICE headquarters, for reasons that are unclear, ordered him released anyway. And he's running around in Detroit pursuing an asylum claim. Normally, nobody who's on the FBI's terrorism watch list who crosses the US border and gets caught gets anything except deported away. They all get deported. But something broke down in the system
mhm,
where he was released and he's still free. Somebody leaked the documents about this case, which I have now, and that's the only way we know about it. I assume that there are many other cases like that. That to me is a system breakdown, the
mhm,
America's Covert Border War breakdown. There was another one that's worth mentioning too. This one happened in Mexico. A Yemeni who the Mexicans caught in April of last year, about 1 year ago now. And he flagged on the FBI's terrorism watch list. People from those parts of the country, we give them the FBI their name. The Mexicans work with the FBI. So that's how they knew that he was watch listed. The FBI went and interviewed him in Mexico, and they deported him back to Yemen, which is the normal thing.
Mhm.
Well, the guy came back and they caught him again, right on the northern border, about to cross into Del Rio, Texas, and they got him. And this time, nobody deported him. He was in Mexican custody for 5 months.
Hmm.
I don't know why they didn't deport him, but a normal process would be deportation. And instead, the Mexicans needed to flush their detention center. It was getting full. We had a really big month in July of last year, hundreds of thousands coming through. The Mexicans are just as swamped as the Americans. And so the Mexicans just let him go into the public, and they don't know whatever happened to him. He just disappeared. They put an alert out for him, be on the lookout for this guy.
Mhm.
I have it. He's expected to cross at Del Rio, and et cetera. He's on the watch list. He's considered dangerous, and he's a terrorist.
Mhm.
That is a breakdown. And that breakdown is because of this mass migration crisis. I suspect that those are not the only cases like this.
Mhm.
And I think the threat is elevated. I've got my fingers crossed that nothing bad is going to happen, that maybe they're too few and far between, but who knows
Mhm.
when you have a situation like this.
Right, because, these people are obviously coming over here with no passports. And, I read about Saudi Arabia that you don't need a passport to even get into that country.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot. When a lot of these people cross the border, they get rid of their identification and whatever they used. A lot of
Mhm.
it's fraudulent documentation, so they don't that they use to get through South American countries. So, but it's evidence of document fraud and other things. So they toss it. You can find all this stuff on the riverbank in
Mhm.
Mexico, piles and piles for hundreds of yards of just discarded documents and personal identities, and they cross in and say, "My name is Mickey Mouse,"
Mhm.
and it's on you.
Mhm.
You know, figure out if I'm not Mickey Mouse, and that's how it works. That's where we are with all of this. I was last year discovered on the Mexican side of the river bank, the Rio Grande, hundreds and hundreds of discarded Chilean ID cards with the faces of Haitians on them. And what that was about is that the Haitians who have been crossing by the thousands and claiming that they're persecuted, government persecuted political asylum refugees, claiming asylum, uh, I can't go back to Haiti. Haiti's terrible. I've been living in Chile for years and Brazil. And if you've been living safely in another country with residency and work authorization, you are ineligible for American. You're not going to get it. So
Mhm.
they throw their cards down because it's evidence against it. They're not going to be able to get through if they end up getting caught with these ID cards. So there are just thousands of them all over the ground.
Mhm.
It's the whole thing is just it's just it's a game. It's a scam. The whole
Mhm.
thing is just the whole asylum thing. Whatever you're hearing about these poor, they have to have access to the asylum system is not about asylum. It's
Mhm.
about how do I avoid deportation? And the way you avoid deportation is say, man, I'm declaring asylum. That's it. I
Mhm.
was persecuted. That's it. You're in.
Mhm. Wow. You know, I won't keep you too much longer, but when you were in, you've been in 30 countries, the Middle East and, uh, all these countries, was there a time that you were, like, really worried that you might not come home?
Yeah, there have been a couple of things that happen. I spend, I'm in territories. Well, it's not really so much just being in whatever, Costa Rica or southern Mexico or Guatemala. It's the places that you go to find
Yeah.
the stories. And yeah, I have had some threats and have had to flee and run and dodge
Mhm.
people and get away and that sort of thing from time to time. Wouldn't say it's all the time, but there have been a couple of those. Uh, you're dealing with smugglers, people who are illegal, involved in illegal businesses, and some of them are pretty sketchy.
Mhm.
I met and have interviewed cartel smugglers and human smugglers and traffickers down in Costa Rica and Nicaragua.
Mhm.
I watched um, Costa Rican smugglers hand over their human commodities to Nicaraguan soldiers who were armed right in front of me, who were on the take. And so, I mean, the whole thing is, the whole, I guess, industry of human smuggling is really wealthy and vast,
Mhm.
and everybody is making huge amounts of money from it, especially the Mexican cartels. The Mexican cartels are now making more money from human smuggling over the border than from drugs for the first time ever. There's so many people coming and they're charging them like, $2,500 a head to just cross the river. And if it's a family, so you're looking at, $8,000,
Mhm.
7,500. It's huge money. And um, there's so many that the cartels actually have had to put in place for the first time ever an inventory control system
Mhm.
where they require that you buy wristbands uh, to show that you paid, and you have to show the raftsman, the boat pilot, your wristband before you can get on. And it's very organized. And these wristbands, the families come over, and every single one of them has a wristband. Even the infants have one around their ankles. And then, there are just thousands and thousands of these. They tear them off when they're done, and they're all over the ground. And it's just all, evidence of how much money is being made and how they've got a control over it, and how industrialized, I guess it is, the conveyor belt.
Mhm.
When the cartels are delivering rafts filled with women and children to the U.S. side, they're not hiding. They're doing it at established points where on our side are border patrol agents who are receiving them
Mhm.
and clocking them in. Like nobody's running, and the cartel pilots are on a first name basis with the National Guardsmen on our side, or the police officers, or it's really, everything is just completely upside down, turned on its head. All the normal, you know, cats are friends with mice and
Mhm.
dogs are friends with cats, and the whole thing is just unbelievable. I mean, I don't think you could go down to the river tonight,
Mhm.
any night, and just see a D-Day invasion just all night long of just raft, 4, 5, 6 abreast, just coming and landing and going back for more and coming and landing, and just thousands coming in. I mean, it's like Ellis Island, man. I
Mhm.
mean, it is. I don't think the American people really understand what's happening, and to the scale, the vastness of what's happening down there. It's just amazing, and nobody's doing anything to stop it. It's just a welcome wagon. It's a welcome committee on our side.
At the taxpayer's expense.
Well, yeah, and then
Yeah.
at what expense we don't know, because when you try to ask for information, it's all, they're hiding the ball. You can't get an answer about who's getting paid and out of what funds, or the whole thing is opaque and anything but transparent.
Mhm.
I mean, eventually we'll find out, but it's going to take litigation to
Mhm.
get the material.
Right, and we're gonna find out the hard way is what's going to
Ah,
happen.
yeah.
Mhm. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, but just not really. But the second phase of this crisis is upon us, and so I don't know if the media is going to cover what's about to happen, but the numbers are about to go through the. I mean, if they're in the stratosphere now, they're about to go into outer space. We have never seen anything like we've seen in the last year, but man, you have never seen what's about to happen. It is going to be really catastrophic. I mean, you are going to have 500,000 people every month coming in,
Mm,
at least. uh and maybe a lot more. I mean, it's hard to tell, but the entire world of poor people, who are not asylum seekers, but they're just poor people, are going to be watching how the people ahead of them get through, whether they get through and how they're getting through. And when they do get through, when we let them through, that's going to trigger everybody in the village,
mhm,
everybody in the town, everybody in the city to just head this way from wherever you are in the world. 40% of everybody who's hitting the southern border are not from Central America or Mexico. They're
mhm,
from 150 different countries. That's brand new.
mhm.
This is like a global migration to our border, from all these different countries. And, good luck calling, the Ghanaian or the Sierra Leone government and asking for their intelligence records or their criminal history on anybody. None of that's going to be happening.
Mm-mm.
So just be on the lookout. Your schools, you'll see it first in your schools. Portable classrooms. If all of a sudden you're having bond elections and they're not telling you why they need all these portable classrooms, and they have a shortage of ESL teachers, all that's going to cost you money. You're going to be paying increased taxes, first of all, in your schools, and your kids' classrooms are going to be filled with people who don't speak English and maybe have never been in school before. And so that's, I think, where people are going to feel it first and be
Mhm.
able to really see it. They should already be able to see it.
Most definitely. You know, how can okay, where can people find your book?
America's Covert Border War is available anywhere books are sold. You get it at your bookstore. You can um, Amazon and Barnes and Noble, wherever. I mean, if you Google America's Covert Border War, you can find it anywhere.
Mhm.
And I'm on Twitter, Bensman Todd. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I have a website, toddbensman.com, where you can sign up for my newsletter and see all my work there. So I'm pretty easy to find, toddbensman.com.
Well, I thank you for coming on my show. I really appreciate your time. That was fascinating.
Happy
You've
to be
done
here. Thank you.
you've done so much work with this book, and I'm very glad you've written it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay.
I'm
Well,
working
here
on another one right now.
oh, good.
It should be out this summer. We're going to try to get it out this summer, about this border crisis that we've been talking about this morning.
Mhm. Oh, that then we'll have another podcast then.
I appreciate it.
Hey, don't jump off. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I'm your host, Maryann Petri, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption and Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again here with Mr. Todd Bensman and other guests. Thank you again.
Thank you.